Good morning, students, and welcome to the subject of elective business management part 2. We are dealing with the third unit that is all about the plant layout and forecasting. In the previous sessions, we have already checked out with the various types of plant layout. In today's session, we'll be checking out with the tools and techniques of the industrial layout planning. What are the different tools and what are different methods which can be used for, say, laying out the plant in the unit or in the industry. Those tools and techniques we are going to check it quickly. All right, as we can see it here. There are various tools, as we can see it here, like starting with the operation process chart, right? So the manufacturing process is divided into separate operations, we know, and it helps with the help of the operation process chart, we can come to know about these operations very easily, because it shows the points at which the materials are introduced in the process, and even it shows the sequence of the various operations and the inspections that are required. But material handling is not shown here, right? So the operation process chart is meant for a kind of new plant which is to be laid out. So this chart represents all the basic activities that are there for producing a product, right? So there can be these method which can be used. The another method is flow chart or flow process chart method. Now what happens in this method is that this chart is a kind of graphic representation of all the production activities that may be occurring on the shop floor. It may be considered as a kind of elaboration of the operation process chart, which may include the storage, maybe the transportation, and even the delays that may be occurring. So data required for preparing such a kind of process flow process charts may be collected by tracing the actual flow work occurring at the distance places, and whatever the time required, everything can be mentioned here. So the flow process chart provides a kind of complete information for the analysis and improvement of the unit. Alright, next comes up in the series is said to be the process flow diagram, right? So process flow diagram is such a kind of diagrammatic representation which helps to have more information other than flow process chart. It is a kind of diagram of the building plan representing graphically the relative positions of the productive machineries, maybe even the storage space, the pathways, everything is being shown. Even it includes the path followed by the man and materials, right? So all the routes followed by the different items are very well shown here by joining the symbols with the straight line. So this is how it helps. The next method is machine data cards. Now what are these methods? Then these cards kind of provide complete specification of each machines to be installed, showing its capacity, maybe the space and other requirements. So foundation methods of operation, even the maintenance and say handling devices of the machine, everything is being shown here in the machine card data. Alright, next comes up is templates. Now after studying the process chart, after studying the process flow diagram and even the machine data cards, a floor plan is prepared by fixing the area that is occupied by maybe by the machines, equipment, benches, racks, whatever the facilities are there in the plant, everything is being shown here, and a kind of each item is erected in the shops, right? So from this it may be prepared with the help of thick sheets of the cardboard, maybe plywood, and even the plastic sheet may be at times cut into such kind of pieces that may turn out to be the templates, so that it represents the various items which are actually placed in the plant, and even it shows the floor plans at the suitable location. So that is how it is used. Next comes up is said to be the models, right? So here the models are created as we generally create the models somewhere in the school projects or something like that. So it is three-dimensional wooden models of maybe the machinery, equipments, and even the other devices and components that can be prepared. And by seeing these models, even a layman can understand the idea about the layout of the plant, right? So this technique, but the only limitation is that this technique may be very costly, and even only the big concern can afford it. Otherwise, most of the time it takes a lot of investment in installing such kind of the models, right? So it is generally avoided. Generally everything the layout is being shown with the help of process chart or operation chart. Next comes up are is said to be the drawing system. This is the common most type of say the technique, and layout drawings can be prepared with the help of the draftsman, showing maybe the walls, the stairways, the machines, the equipments and everything that is being placed with the help of the drawing, so that all the workers or maybe whosoever is working in the plant or factories can come to know exactly about the layout, right. So this is how the layout and the techniques and different tools can be used. Here we are going towards the B part of our unit, that is said to be the forecasting, right. I'll tell you how sales forecasting and the various concepts have been mentioned here, various related aspects have been shown here, and how sales forecasting and the layout has got its own connection. See, sales forecasting is kind of predicting the sales, because the sales depends upon the production, and production depends upon what type of layout should the company have. That is why the sales forecasting is connected with plant layout. In the further explanation you will understand it better. So first let us begin with the meaning and the introduction of sales forecast. As you can see, the prediction of the future sales is what is known as sales forecasting. Now what happens is, every manufacturer makes a kind of estimation about the sales that is likely to happen in the near future. So what happens is, it gives a kind of focus to all the activities of the business enterprise. In absence of this sales forecast, a business works in a random and haphazard manner. So the sales forecasting is a must and a very primary activity for any production unit. So a businessman who invests a large amount of capital in his business cannot afford to work on a random basis or haphazardly. So he has to plan his production and sales activities accordingly. Now what happens is, forecasting here helps the business to work according to the plans and helps him to work systematically. So accurate sales forecasting is very important to enable to how to produce, or what amount to be produced, or what will be the required quantities at a right time, and a kind of arrangement can be made in advance. All the various factors of the production, like building, equipment, machineries, accessories, raw material, labor, whatever is required can be managed beforehand, right. And then if the production is done, then we can make it more viable. So sales forecasting helps the firm to assess a kind of probable demand for its product and can plan out the production then accordingly. So it is very helpful tool for the manufacturers, right. So sales forecasting is also helpful in better planning and maybe the allocation means distribution of various resources. So planning is always based on certain kind of assumptions that we have seen, right. And about the future course of action, if some kind of assumption is made, then we can make it better in the real course of time, right. So sales forecast is kind of estimation of the sales volume that company can expect to attain with the plan or maybe a period of plan, right. So a sales forecast is not just a kind of sales prediction, but it is the act of matching the opportunities with the marketing efforts, and that is why it should be treated as very important area of work before laying the plant layout. So let us see it one few of the basic definitions of the sales forecast. As we can see it, the sales forecast is a kind of an estimation of the sales during a specified period of time, and whose estimate is tied to a proposed marketing plan, and which assumes a particular state of controllable and competitive forces. So a kind of demand forecasting is done, on the basis of which you come to know that this may be the sales, that may be a probable sales will come to know, and accordingly we can manufacture the goods. That is why sales forecasting is considered to be very important, crucial activity. If we move forward, there are different objectives of sales forecasting. As you can see it, as I told you, it can help to set the sales target, right. The primary purpose is that we can establish a kind of sales performance or maybe the goals for the organization, and we can get the real or maybe more accurate picture of the sales with the help of this. So that is the primary purpose. Next comes up is to maintain the inventory, right. So an accurate sales forecasting also helps to estimate the amount of raw materials that may be required for the future goals to meet. So it helps to have the inventory under control. In peak period we can have more amount of inventories, in a slack period we can avoid investing in inventories. Such decisions can be taken up. Next objective is to regulate manpower requirement, right? Even we can come to know about how much manpower is required. When there is a continuous production, you may require more number of people to work. Even a good manpower policy can be framed because it is needed to prevent any shortage of manpower. All these things are dependent on the sales forecasting. Next comes up is to decide the plant capacity. Very, very important. On the basis of whatever the sales forecasting is done by the organization, the organization can plan out the plant with the output or the desired capacity. That means in this or with the help of sales forecasting, we'll come to know that these many amount of sales or these many number of sales can be taken up. So for that we need the manufacturing of these many items, and likewise we can plan out our capacity also. And if we need to increase or decrease the capacity, or we can if we need to downsize the capacity, that also decision can be taken up. Next comes up is we can predict the expenses, right? It helps in predicting different types of expenses, and maybe we can plan out the budget accordingly. It is also useful in preparing the credit policy of the company. It is also required for the uninterrupted supply of the inputs and resources, definitely. So these are considered to be all the objectives that may be there, or that may be say fulfilled once we are getting or we are having the sales forecasting done. Here few features or say distinguished feature of forecasting has been shown. That is there is involvement of future events. Naturally, sales forecasting itself means we are predicting something about future. Next feature is it depends upon the past as well as the present event, right? Though we are focusing on future, the past data or the past events and even the present event makes a lot of difference. Next comes up is it's a kind of guideline for happening of the future events, because we are predicting for the future. So happening of the future events can be precisely known in the current situation. Next comes up is makes use of forecasting techniques. Yes, very important. Further in the description, further in the explanation, we will study the forecasting techniques. So there may be use of various techniques also. So these are considered to be the distinguished features of sales forecasting. Let us go to the different elements of forecasting process. Forecasting process may be different depending upon the requirement of the manufacturing unit for every unit, right? Again, it may be different for the production unit, it may be different for service sector. But here what we are going to see are the few common elements that are there, that are present in the forecasting process. આ એવા ઘટકો છે જે કોઈ પણ forecasting sales forecasting process ની અંદર હાજર હોય છે. Like preparing of the groundwork. Naturally, you have to have the groundwork done. You have to have the thorough study, investigation and analysis of the company, maybe its product, its market share, its structure, everything can be known, or everything is required, right? So it is the kind of investigation even of the past performances of these factors, right? And then we can predict the future, so that it has to be a proper and complete groundwork which is required. Next comes up is establishing the future business, right? The future expectancy of the business can be reasonably computed with the help of the past data, as well as the input from the key executives of the organization, sales personnel, or maybe even the other specialist people. So this forecast is developed with the participation of key personnel and it is officially communicated to all of them. Thus all these people assumes a kind of responsibility for meeting this forecast, and even shares the accountability of any deviations from the forecast. So future business is being established, right? Next comes up is the next factor that is, or element that is important, which is known as comparing of the actual and estimated results. Now the forecast estimates over the future years and provides a kind of benchmarks against which the actual growth and the result can also be measured or compared. If there are significant variations, means if there are changes between the two, one or the other way, one way or the other, the reasons for the deviations can be investigated, can be found out, can be analyzed, and a rectification or the correction of the policies or maybe the methods may be done. Then comes up the refining of the forecast. Very, very important in the light of any deviations found. If any kind of deviations are found, then the forecast can be refined, can be to make it more realistic. If some conditions have changed during the periodic evaluation, then new values of the variables can be taken up and it can be implemented or incorporated in the estimates. Thus, this constant revisions and refinement and improvements would add to the experience and the skill of forecasting. Right. So these are considered to be few of the very important elements of the sales forecasting. Next that we need to consider are said to be the factors that influences the sales forecasting. See, there are so many factors. There may be so many different types of determinants. Right. ઘણી બધી પ્રકારના factors હોઈ શકે, ઘણા બધા determinants હોઈ શકે જે sales forecasting ને influence કરતા હોય ને પ્રભાવિત કરતા હોય. Here we are going to check out them in short. That is first of all general economic condition. Definitely it is essential to consider all the economic condition relating to the firm and the consumers and maybe the market, right? So the forecaster must see the general economic trend, maybe it is inflation or deflation which may affect the business at times favorably or even the it may be adverse effect that it may be causing. So past behavior of the market, national income, disposable personal income, so many other economic factors and determinants are there which are to be studied because it has its direct or indirect impact on the the maintaining of the firm or maybe continuing with the activities of the firm. Next comes up is next important determinant is consumers. See, products like apparels, luxury goods, furnitures, vehicles, the size of population, its composition, the customers, maybe demographic like age, sex, type, economic condition, etc. have very important role to play, right? And it because it creates a kind of trend of fashion, whatever the religious habits of the people may be, maybe whatever the social groups that influences, all these types of consumers are there in the market, and these many types of products are related to the consumers and how they wish to take up the product for the future. So consumers may be a very important determinant. Next comes up is industrial behavior. How this determinant works? See, markets are full of similar products manufactured by different firms. We know that, right? So which compete among themselves to increase their sales. As such, the pricing policy, design, the technological improvements, promotional activities, etc. of the similar industries must be thus carefully observed. A new firm may come up with the products to the markets and it may affect the market share of the existing firm. So it is very important to study the industrial behavior. So unstable conditions, industrial unrest, maybe different types of government control through different types of rules and regulations, even the improper availability of the raw materials, maybe so many factors which may affect the industrial behavior, and that should be studied before taking up with the sales forecasting. Next comes up is changes within the firm. See, at times the internal changes in the firm may also create a change in the sales forecasting methods or maybe the process, right? So future sales are greatly affected by the changes in the pricing, maybe advertising policies, quality of product may change, right? So a careful study in relation to the changes of on the sales volume may also be studied carefully, and sales can be increased by, say, price cut, enhancing the advertising policies, maybe increase the sales promotion, concession to the customers, etc. Next comes up is the period. So the again that is important, time factor is very, very important. Like the required information must be collected on the basis of say the period, like short run, medium run, or maybe the long run forecast, right? So timing plays very important role. For what time period you are forecasting, that matters a lot. Here we are going to see few of the importance of sales forecasting. Though we have studied it indirectly, let us see it in the form of points. So sales forecasting enables a business organization to work systematically. Next, forecast helps the production manager to set the target. Again, next is it enables the sales department to fix the responsibilities of on every salesman. Next, in the absence of sales forecast, what happens is a business enterprise may work haphazardly or without any focus, and this may result in the wastage of resources. So with the help of sales forecast, we can avoid the wastage of resources. Next comes up is it helps to cut down the wasteful expenditure, as I said earlier also, and as a result the goods can be offered at a fair price to the customers. Next is sales forecast enables all the departments of the business to work together in a proper coordination and kind of cooperation, right? So that can be done. As the target is set for each individual and department, it is easy to control the performance of each department. Next, sales forecasting is very important or vital for even preparing the budget. So it plays very, very crucial role for preparing the budget of the company. Whether it is a small unit or a big, the budget is always prepared, and sales forecasting plays a very vital role. Next importance is that it helps to decide the production capacity that is actually required. At times, sales forecasting helps you to know that whatever the probable sales is, accordingly are we having the sales capacity, are we having the manufacturing capacity or not. If not, then we can make the according changes, and if there is excess, we can make the use of the excess capacity likewise, right? So that helps the to know the actually required production capacity against whatever we are holding. Next, 10th one comes up is sales forecast helps in product mix decision as well. Like it enables the business to decide whether to add any new product to its product, or even to drop the unsuccessful or maybe unviable product in the market. So this is how sales forecasting is important from these 10 reasons, right? Here we are showing the types of sales forecasting. We are not going in depth of this. We are just checking out the types of sales forecasting. Maybe economic sales forecast may be there, industry forecast may be there, company forecast may be there, though because it is not directly related to plant layout, we are avoiding its detailed study. Here we are going to see the purpose of sales forecast. See, I told you earlier also કે જે ફોરકાસ્ટિંગ છે એ ડિફરન્ટ પર્પઝથી થઈ શકે. તો ટાઈમ છે એ બહુ બેઝિક ફેક્ટર છે કે બેઝિક ડિટર્મિનન્ટ છે જેને ધ્યાનમાં લેવો પડે. સો દેર કેન બી અ કાઇન્ડ ઓફ શોર્ટ રન ફોરકાસ્ટ, right? It is also known as operating forecast, and covering a maximum time period of 1 year, or it may be even for 6 month, half yearly, quarterly, or even on a monthly or a weekly base. So that type of forecast is known as short run forecast, right? And this type of forecasting can be advantageously utilized for estimating the stocks, maybe providing working capital, maybe deciding the sales quotas, and the fast moving factors can be known. So it facilitates the management to improve and coordinate the policies, say related to marketing, production, inventory, purchasing, finance, etc. So short run forecasts are preferred to all the types and bring more benefit than the other types. So this is very well known purpose or maybe the type of forecast that is done for short run, right? Here a few purposes or objectives have been given. The next comes up is medium run forecast. Now what is this time period? Then this type of forecast may cover from more than 1 year to 2 years or maybe 4 years, and this helps the management to estimate maybe the profits and can bring a control over the budget, expenditure, production, etc. Factors like price trend, tax policies, institutional credit, etc. are specially considered for such kind of medium run good forecast, right? Then comes up is said to be the long run forecast. Now these type of forecast may cover say a period of 1 year to 5 years depending on the nature of the firm. See, seasonal changes are not considered here, and so the forecaster takes into account the population changes, maybe the competition changes, economic depression, or maybe the hike or boom, inventions, technological changes. These type of changes are taken up or should be considered in the long run period of the span between 1 year to 5 years, right? Say it may even take for adding the new products or dropping old ones. These decisions can be taken up after the long run forecast, right? Again, different purposes of the long term forecasting is shown here. Here there are advantages of forecasting. They are more or less same as compared to what importance we have seen earlier, right? So this is all about that. We move on to the next area, that is the limitation of sales forecast. See, if the sales forecast, if we consider it to be the important area, it has its own limitations also, not the disadvantages, but yes, there are limitations which one must consider. Like limitation number 1, the taste and preference of the buyers keeps on changing. They don't remain constant, and that does not allow the sales forecast to be accurate. Next comes up is the economic conditions. Again, economic conditions prevailing in every country does not remain stable, right? Maybe the purchasing power of the money, the saving policies or the saving attitude of the people, investing attitude of the people are some of very important economic factors which has a kind of bearing on sales forecast. So if that changes, the sales forecast will not be accurate. Next comes up is the political conditions. See, political conditions in the state or maybe the center may influence the sales forecast because the government policies of the government policies may change regarding the business, right? And there may be a kind of sudden hike in the duties, maybe sales tax or GSTs, right? That may increase, and that may create a kind of say adverse or maybe the beneficial impact on the business, but the sales forecast do have a kind of bearing on this kind of a condition also. So these may lead to a wrong forecast or maybe limited forecast. Next limitation comes up is the entry of the competitors. Many a times it may so happen that there may be new entry of the competitor, and that may not allow you to have the correct number of sales which you must have predicted. So if the buyers keep on finding the competitors or maybe the product superior to yours, then the sales forecast may change, right? Next comes up is progress in the science and technology, which may render the kind of say whatever the progress is there in the science and technology, maybe that may lead to the technology which you may be using to an obsolete. So as a result, product which are right now enjoying a good market may lose the market somewhere in the future because of the entry of the latest technology. So these may also not allow you to have the perfect sales forecast. Next comes up is maybe the fashion, right? So fashion may be one of the important area which may affect the sales forecast or may limit the sales forecast. So what happens is changes are throughout. So present styles may change any time, right? So it is difficult to say about the future, and we may not come to know that what will be the future position or what will be the future fashion. So at that time it may create a kind of problems, and because the fashion do not remain constant, we cannot rely on that, and if we are relying on that, the sales forecast may be wrong. Next comes up is lack of sales history. So what happens is a sales history or maybe the past records are essential to make the forecast plan, and if these past data are not available or may be misleading, then the sales will lead to a wrong result. Next is psychological factors. You see, consumers' attitude may change from time to time. The forecaster may not be able to predict everything and exactly about the behavior of the consumer. Certain market environments are quick in action, right? Even the rumors can affect the market variables. So it is very important to check the psychological factors, and if psychological factors are not favorable or are if not studied properly, then it may lead to a wrong forecast. There may be a series of other reasons also, like it may be possible that the growth may not remain uniform, it may decline or may be static, right? The economic conditions of a country may not be favorable to the business activities, or maybe the policies of the government, impositions of the taxes and the controls. These all are such kind of other reasons which may affect the sales, and so it will affect the sales forecast. Next comes up is the 10th one, that is time and cost factor. So time and cost factor is also an important aspect of forecasting. They suggest a kind of degree to which the organization will go for the formal forecasting, right? So the information and the data required for forecast may be highly disorganized, in a very highly disorganized form at times. So some may be in a qualitative form, some may be in the quantitative form, and to bring it to one single form, or it may not be possible to get it unified. right? So what managers have to trade off between is the cost involved in forecasting and maybe the results which are expected as the benefits, right? So forecasting should be made eliminating all the above limitations, right? So these are the limitations. We are going to see few of the methods of sales forecasting which are commonly used, and they can be classified, as you can see it in the chart here, in the form of qualitative forecasting and quantitative forecasting, right? Qualitative naturally means that the figures are not quantifiable, they cannot be counted, and that is why it is said to be few methods which are said to be qualitative in nature, right? Quantitative on the other hand mostly pertains to the numbers and figures, and that is why sales forecast, budgets, numerical projections, all these things are possible with the help of quantitative forecasting. But qualitative forecasting is based on the opinions, especially the expert opinions, or it is dependent on the judgments on the qualitative, and the qualitative forecasting doesn't rely on history, and that is why it can also it can be used to say decide or determine a company's strength, weakness, opportunities and threats. That means what can be done as well as to predict the performance, right? So this is what is known as qualitative forecasting. Let us see first the qualitative forecasting method. As you can see here, first method that comes up is jury of executive opinions. Under this method, what happens is the opinions of the group of high level managers with the combination with the statistical models are pulled and arrive at a group estimate of the demand. So that is what is the executive opinions are taken up together of the high level managers, right? Statistical models are pulled and then the decision may be taken up, or maybe the demand may be estimated. Next comes up is sales force composite. In this approach, each salesperson who is doing the field work, is asked to estimate what sales can be his or her, what sales can take place in his or her region, and these forecasts are then reviewed and to come up to the realistic and then combined at a district level or maybe at the national level. Means all the sales force opinion or maybe their composite sales forecasting is taken up together, and then a decision may be taken up. The next qualitative technique is about the consumer market survey. This is again commonly used technique. In this method, what happens is inputs from the customers or the potential customers regarding their future purchasing plans are gathered, and it can help only in preparing a kind of forecast, but also it helps to improve the product design at times. Even if the new product is being launched, before commercializing it, if such kind of market survey is done, we can make the modifications in the product design, right? And the planning of the new product becomes more easy. Next method comes up is Delphi method. Now this is a kind of group process which intends to achieve the consensus forecast. That means there are three different types of participants in Delphi methods: decision makers, that means experts themselves; staff personnel, maybe the coordinators; and the respondents. Now the decision makers usually consist of a group of say 5 to 10 experts. What do they do? Who will be making a kind of actual forecast. What the staff personnel or the coordinator assists the decision makers by preparing the distributing, collecting and summarizing a series of questionnaire and the survey result, right? All these things are being prepared by the coordinators or maybe the staff personnel, and the respondents are the group of people located in the different places whose judgment are then valued and being sorted out, and then the results may be depending upon that. So that is what is known as Delphi method. Next comes up is nominal group discussion. What happens in this method is like Delphi technique, the nominal group discussion involves a kind of panel of experts, and unlike the Delphi technique, the nominal group technique provides an opportunity for discussion say among the experts. Here even 7 to 10 experts are asked to write down a list of ideas or maybe the area of forecast, right? And all the ideas are then discussed and then ranked so that a decision can be say extracted out of it. So these are all considered to be the qualitative methods, right? Now we are coming towards the quantitative method. The name itself suggests the quantitative method of forecasting involves a kind of say numericals or maybe the where the statistical data are available. Such kind of methods are known as quantitative method. As you can see, the first one is time series. The time series technique predicts the simple assumption that the future is a function of the past, and so in other words we can say that they look what has happened over a period of time and uses a kind of series of the past data for forecasting the future. And some of the tools which may be used are simple average, moving average, and even the exponential smoothing method. Simple average you must have studied somewhere. It is a kind of simplest way to forecast, assuming that the demand in the next period of time will be equal to the average of the past demands, and here the demands of the previous say periods are equally weighted. So by averaging it or by taking an average, one can detect the pattern of tendency of demand, and that is how we can find out the say, or we can use it for forecasting. Next comes up is moving average. Now the moving average forecast uses a number of recent actual data values from the several of the most recent periods to generate a kind of forecast. Now once the number of past periods to be used in the calculations has been selected, it is held constant. So moving average is useful if we can assume that the market demand will stay fairly steady. This can be used where there are not expected changes and there are not more changes to expected, right? And then the moving method can be used. A 4-month moving average is found by simple summing of the 4 months data, and it is divided by 4. So the average moves over the time in that. After each period elapses, the demand for the oldest period is discarded and the demand for the newest period is then added. Such kind of say calculations may be there. A weighted moving example has been given. A weighted moving average is a weight can also be assigned to some time periods like festive periods, Diwali period. The consumption of few items may be more. So depending upon that we can take up or we can use this method for forecasting. Next comes up is exponential smoothing. Exponential smoothing is such a kind of method which is known as we can call it a kind of sophisticated weighted average method, and exponential means becoming more and more rapid, that means fast, right? So it is it involves a very little record keeping of the past data. So what happens is exponential smoothing is a very different way. It weighs the each past data, and the pattern of the weights is exponential in the form. That means it keeps on changing rapidly. So demand for the most recent period is weighted most heavily. That means whatever is asked in the recent period, that is given the highest weighted, and the weights placed on the successive older period goes on decreasing, right? So that is what is known as exponential smoothing. Next comes up is regression model. Here in the regression model is a kind of casual forecasting technique output that establishes a kind of relationship between the variables, right? There is one dependent variable and one or more independent variables which may be used. Historical data established a functional relationship between the two variables, and if there is one independent variable, it is called simple regression, otherwise it becomes multiple regression. So these are all this may be considered to be one of the statistical method, or it is even known as the quantitative method, right? And regression model can be then used for forecasting. We are moving towards the last part, that is what are the criteria of the good forecasting. What is to be kept in mind if we want to make a good forecast? Why? Because depending on this forecast we can plan out our manufacturing, and depending upon our production management or production planning, we can plan out our layout, right? So it is very important to keep few points in mind. Like first one is plausibility. That means the possibility should be kept in mind, and that is one of the criteria that should be kept in mind. Plausibility is kind of what can be believed, right? So the management should have a kind of good understanding of the technique chosen, and they should have confidence in whatever the techniques that are adopted. So it is these particular kind of plausibility, that means which can be believed, that should be there in a kind of forecasting. If unbelievable forecasts are made, unreal forecasting results would be there, right? So experienced executives will have a kind of market feel, and they can control or they can contribute effectively towards having this plausibility. Next concept, it has to be simple. That means simplicity should be maintained. These method chosen, whatever the method may be chosen, should be simple in nature and easy to understand by the executives. Elaborated mathematical and too much of econometric procedures should be avoided, and more simple ways of finding or say calculating the forecast should be used. The third point is about economy. That means cost is a very prime concern for every unit, right? So if you involve too much of cost, or if you are adopting for costly kind of methods, then that will not allow you to have the economy, or it will increase the cost, and that's not a kind of advisable thing for the organization. So it is always that economical aspect should be kept in mind. So there is no point in adopting a very high level of accuracy at great expenses, because forecast is forecast, it's a prediction, and 100% result cannot always be availed, right? It is always it always refers to changes. So that economy point should be also kept in mind. The next and the fourth one comes up is said to be availability, and the last one, that means immediate availability of the data is very important in forecasting. If you can't avail the data when it is to be used, then the technique makes the forecasting goes in vain, right? So the technique should yield a kind of quick and kind of meaningful results. Any delays in may adversely affect the managerial decision. એટલે ફોરકાસ્ટ કરવામાં આપણે કોઈ પણ ટાઈપની ડેટા અવેલેબિલિટીમાં ખામી રાખીએ છીએ તો અવેલેબલ નથી હોતા ડેટા, તો દેટ મે લીડ ટુ ધ say the adverse impact on the decisions. So to conclude, we can say that ideal forecasting method is the one which helps or which yields or gives good results, and the costs are kept under control, right, and meets all the new circumstances with the flexibility. When we can do this, we can say that yes, there is ideal forecasting done, because forecasting is important, on which the production depends, and production depends on how well you can plan out with the plant layout, and that is how the sales forecasting or maybe the forecasting can be considered as one of the important and interconnected method, or maybe the matter with the plant layout. Here we are ending up with this particular unit, and we'll meet for the next fresh unit in our next lecture. By that time, take care of yourselves and goodbye. Thank you.